Welcome to War Room Impeachment, 2 November, year of our Lord 2019, episode 14. We are live at the Breitbart Embassy in the War Room, down in the basement. Tremendous amount going on. This show has had a big impact, and one of the big impacts is just getting the word out to the grassroots folks about what's going on. We try to give the information every day. We try to talk about who the witnesses are, what they're going to say, to break down the analysis of this. We talk about messaging. We talk about polling. We go specifically into the districts of the 31 Democrats that won. The freshman Democrats are going to be key to this impeachment vote. We talk about the 19 Republicans that are going to retire, what's happening there. Also, the rest of the maybe guys in the House are not exactly fans of the president.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is WJFN 100.5 FM, Goochland, Richmond, Charlottesville. We're having some technical difficulties from the War Room studio, but we will return to the program as soon as possible. Thank you.
A lot to go through.
Steve, let's just reset on that.
Okay.
Technical issues. We may have lost the stream for a minute there. Let's just reset on that. Where people can find this: iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. We'll be on Spotify, Tennessee Star.
Yeah, I think the Minnesota Star, Tennessee Star, the Michigan Star. He's got like 5 papers. We'll make sure they're up on our website so you can link to them also, or you know about them. Great news there. Gateway Pundit, all of that. Listen, one of the reasons I love the technical issues, you know why? We're putting this together with baling wire. This is a real war room where it's kind of stood up instantaneously. I want to get to what happened in Iowa last night. I did talk to a correspondent that was out there. It's got some, I think, important breaking news that nobody else has reported. But first, Congressman Gates, who did this, really broke the fever on Thursday a week ago when he led that contingent. You had storming the Bastille, where this was storming the SCIF, and that really broke the fever. It gave America accessibility to the fact of the Star Chamber of Congressman Schiff. And from that time on, David Rifkin came on, and we had the great op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, talked about the unconstitutionality of the process, and Nancy Pelosi was forced to call it audible. As we said yesterday, you could tell on Colbert, she was not on her game. It's the first time she's been rattled, and look, we've given her a hat tip from day one. She's a master in political warfare, and she has run a masterful political disinformation campaign for September 4th. Or September 24th, but now you have the House, you have the Senate, you have the campaign, you have the RNC, you have what we're doing here, the effort we're doing here, you have the folks in the White House. Everybody is now on point, and you're seeing this thing, I think, turn around. The reason is it's the evidence, the substance of it, and that's what the president keeps saying: substance, substance, substance. The president is talking about how in a fireside chat where he will actually read either the entire transcript or he'll read excerpts from the transcript, but that is has liberals' heads blowing up. Gates talked about the central thing we need is the killers. We need the killers back. So we have our co-host here, Jason Miller, who was the strategist and comms director on the 2016 campaign on the transition for the White House, and a huge piece of manpower, knows how to run the war rooms. Raheem Kassam was Nigel Farage's wingman. We had Nigel here the other day, and of course the president and Nigel made huge news in the United Kingdom. Maybe we'll get to that before we end the show, because Brexit and 2016 Trump victory are inextricably linked. That's why things are happening together. They're still linked as the established order of the Party of Davos, whether that's the London branch or the New York, D.C. branch, continues to try to reject the populist movement that brought Donald Trump to power and the movement that he is head of. One of the killers on the campaign was Boris Epstein. Boris ran the surrogate program. We'll have Boris later on the show explain what it is. One of the things we're trying to do here, particularly for the grassroots, is coach you up. And to coach you up exactly what a war room is, what messaging is, what a surrogate program is, what booking is, what media booking is, what polling is, what tracking polls are, what the legal aspects are, this 24-hour-a-day intensity when you have to stand something up. And I was talking to one of the grassroots leaders last night. We're hurtling towards a Kavanaugh-type situation. The intensity is only going to build. And for folks out in the audience, particularly if you have kids, if you have children, you have teenagers, this is going to be, I think, one of the great civic lessons in American history. You're going to be able to see it real time. Now, it's going to get quite nasty. It's going to be a lot of sharp elbows. It's going to be a lot of hot talking. And sometimes maybe not as bad as the Kavanaugh when that got pretty X-rated. But this is going to get very tough. Boris was our head of the surrogate program on the campaign. He is the chief political commentator for Sinclair Broadcasting, one of the great broadcasting companies out there, and a real bastion of conservative thought. He was also a special assistant to Donald J. Trump, the president, in the communications department in the White House. And we want to give a hat tip to the people in the comms department today doing a great job. Stephanie Grisham, Kelly and Conway, the whole crew over there. If you have to hunker down, that's the team you want to hunker down with, and just doing a fantastic job, both the digital side, the whole communication side. And Boris came out of it. Boris, thanks. You're one of the killers. So thanks for. I wanted to have you on as early a show as possible.
I love it.
And a couple of things we're going to have today. Boris is going to talk about messaging. We're going to talk about messaging. Boris is then going to come back and talk about the concept of a surrogate, what surrogates do, how you see them on TV. And most importantly, later, we're going to have Boris talk about Sinclair as a network that has many stations throughout the country, and particularly in the heartland of this country. And one of the things that we're trying to get here in the war room, you got a bubble, and inside this bubble, inside the bubble, you've got it, and inside the Acela corridor, you have a mindset. And how is this playing out in the hustings? I will say, before I turn to Raheem, and I want to get into the messaging aspects last night, I talked to a number of people that were at the Liberty and Justice, I think it was called Forum, last night in Des Moines, Iowa. It's the largest event that takes place before the Iowa caucus. There were 13,000 people. They're all Democrats. This is the old, it's a famous thing. This is where Barack Obama got his launch in, I think, 2007 against Hillary Clinton. This is the old Jefferson-Jackson dinner. They now, for political correctness, have taken away the name Jefferson-Jackson. I think it's because President Trump put the portrait of President Jackson up in the Oval Office as one of his predecessor populist and economic nationalists that their heads blew up, but they've now renamed that. But I got to tell you, outside of Bernie Sanders, what I'm hearing from people who are there, the I word was not used, or if it was used by Warren, Buttigieg, Mayor Pete, Kamala Harris, or Joe Biden, it was only said in passing. That Bernie Sanders is the only one who made a big deal about it. Impeachment, the candidates in Iowa were not talking about impeachment. They did not make a big deal about it. But it's very clear that Biden's presentation, this is uniform. I talked to a number of people who were there, was pretty flat and pretty awful, pretty standard. It was just a rotary. But he didn't really mention impeachment. Every speaker, though, did focus on orange man bad. I mean, it's all pure Trump hate. They are triggered by the President of the United States. Boris, you've seen this from the beginning. Raheem, I'll come back to you in a second to talk about message. You've seen this from the beginning of this hatred of Trump. I mean, you went in, you ran the surrogate program, but you and Jason Miller were among the ones, and Sarah Huckabee. Billy Bush weekend.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
No, Billy Bush weekend. Rudy, Boris, Sarah Huckabee, and a handful of others went in and just took the incoming. What's it like in the intensity of these green rooms when it's all hatred?
Well, the hatred's beyond just the green rooms. You've got it in the green rooms. You've got it anywhere you go. I remember on Billy Bush weekend, so the tape comes out on a Friday. The president does his announcement Friday night late. You remember that. Saturday morning, I'm off.
We were very proud of that because we got it done in one night. And we shot it live and cut it. Then, of course, the mainstream media said it was a hostage video, right? And I thought it was very. If you go back and look at the day, he laid out the case pretty well that would get him through the weekend and then drive to the presidency. Of course, the mainstream media was all over us that night. You made a hostage video.
Well, they wouldn't have been happy with anything unless he quit. Let's be honest.
That's what they wanted.
That's what they wanted. So, to that point.
This guy's got no quid in
No.
him. The wrong guy.
The next morning, I'm off to St. Louis for the debate, and I've got a hit on MSNBC.
We only send Boris in for the easy ones.
Right.
This was not Fox and Friends.
No, it's not Fox Business. Okay.
Right.
It's not Charles Payne. Okay.
Right.
So it's a 12:10 flight, GCA to St. Louis. And I've got a noon, top of the hour hit with Kristen Walker on MSNBC. What do? I'm taking it from my phone, sitting on the plane. On the plane is me, Judge Janine, Tucker Carlson, all sitting around each other. I am screaming into my phone about how much of a crook Hillary Clinton is, about how we're going to win, how Donald Trump has never given up, how he's not the one to give up, as you just said. And then Tucker, and then
Because of 12-10, they were pushing the idea he was going to quit. That the Republican establishment was going to have him step down. Because
Of
remember,
course.
we had Paul Ryan and others pulling their endorsements.
yeah, we had to change the distribution of our war room emails.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
So Sarabian was part of that. So as I'm on the phone, I continue to talk about what the president's going to do, what the candidate's going to do, the important issues. Yes, how these were bad comments, but they were over 10 years ago, et cetera, et cetera.
Locker room talk.
Locker room talk. I continue
Locker
to
room banter, but that didn't fly. And that's not banter. It's
Talk.
talk. It's talk.
Yeah, we don't banter in the locker room. Come on, nobody wants to banter in the locker room. It's talk. It's not
I
chatting.
don't always get it right the first time.
So I keep talking up until the plane is up and away. I ignore the stewardess. I keep talking, and then as I cut off, I then heard the audio.
Media Matters will have this up. They'll have this up. Trump spokesman breaks FAA rules.
Yeah, arrested. Should have been
right.
arrested. Should have been arrested. So Walker says on the other line, "Well, there goes Boris Epstein off the convention." Later, I was talking to Tucker. He goes, he has never felt that amount of hate in one confined space that the rest of that airplane felt for me. And that's what we dealt with. We dealt that day in, day out.
And this is talk about messaging. I want to pivot now to Raheem. By the way, the reason Billy Bush is analogous, I make the analogy that's where we were.
I totally agree.
This is where we were before Gates went down and broke the fever with that move, which is a brilliant strategic move. Matt Gates is not only is he a firebrand. I know the left tries to dismiss him, but he's a strategist. That was a strategic move. Now we're pivoting, and it's about they were marching divided and going to fight united. We chop block Nancy Pelosi. She's now had to go to. She's now on this show. Just jump in. I'll take this mic and just dominate.
Did you see that on Twitter last night? Matt Dowd attacked Matt Gaetz for no reason. And Dowd's a former Bush guy who the only reason the guy's got a job on ABC is because now he's a former conservative who attacks conservatives.
This is what we got. But remember,
crap.
here's the thing. After Billy Bush, it came together about 10 days, 2 weeks later. Everybody pulled back together. That's what you're seeing happening now. You need Republican establishment. You need the libertarians. You need the limited government conservatives. You need the populists. You need the Trump movement, the MAGA movement to get through this impeachment. Everybody's got to pull back together and start pulling one way. And the way we do that is consistent messaging.
No doubt.
You see this. Okay, Raheem, we had Reince. I did this on Thursday night a little bit. Reince picked the ball up on the show on Friday morning, and then we went to, and then you can see now Ted Cruz is pushing it. Let's talk about the range of messaging we've got here.
So I think a lot of people have been now caught up on this no quid pro quo stuff. But I think what some people, specifically, I think a lot of credit due to Andy McCarthy over at National Review in his two-part series that was published earlier this week. The no quid pro quo line actually, and I'll disagree with you a little bit here as well, and with Jason, alongside this process is unconstitutional line. It's not an attack line. It's not something that's necessarily cutting through. Andy McCarthy,
the no quid pro quo.
No quid pro quo. Andy McCarthy.
I'm gonna stand my ground on that, but hey, we got colleagues who do other things. That's fine.
I tell you what, he clarifies your argument for you. It's not that it's in an
And
opposition.
Andy always does
It's
that.
finessing.
That's what we love Andy.
He says what you don't mean no quid pro quo. What you mean is no improper quid pro quo. You see, in all foreign affairs dealings, whether it's aid dealings, whether it's diplomatic visits, there's always a quid pro quo. Remember when Obama went and interfered in the Brexit referendum, that was a quid pro quo. But nobody at the time said, "Look at this foreign interference quid pro quo. David Cameron's doing something for Obama. Obama's doing something for David Cameron in turn." You know it was a quid pro quo because he said back of the queue, not back of the line. Remember when they were threatening about the UK-US trade deal? That was how Obama threatened the Brits to try and vote against Brexit. It's the same thing that's happening here. What the argument that Andy McCarthy is making is that it's not an improper quid pro quo. And here's the thing: if you know anything about international relations, you could take a basic one.
Why is it not? It's not improper because of intent.
That's the thing. That's exactly what Reince Priebus came on the show and talked about.
So
yesterday.
Andy McCarthy started this with these two pieces in the National Review. We'll get them up on the War Room site so you can link to it, but you can go to National Review. Andy McCarthy is one of the best legal minds out there on the right. And that's a two-part series. That's what he argues, okay? Do we have a clip, either mine from Thursday night or Reince's from yesterday, whatever it is? I laid it out there. This is what Anderson Cooper was up in my grill about.
Yeah, I was asked to pick between you and Reince on clips, and I picked Reince.
Fine,
that okay?
that's fine. That's absolutely correct. That's fine. It's enough of me on here. That's fine. I'm very proud of the Anderson Cooper thing, but hey, that's okay. That's okay. No, Reince's was fantastic. Because Reince is a lawyer and laid it out yesterday, I think, very clearly. See other people picking up. Boris is going to have something to say about it. Let's go to Reince.
Well, yeah, let's play the clip from Reince Priebus yesterday on the show. Producer Al.
I don't think it's that difficult to win on the merits.
Why do you think we won on the merits?
Well, because I don't think that there's any. Because look, even if President Trump did the things that he was accused of, ultimately the funds were released without the prerequisite
Exactly.
for the funds
There's no quid pro quo.
being released. Okay, so then now the case comes down to a mens rea case, which is the state of mind of the president, and we are now going to argue in front of the entire country mens rea and intent of a president that ultimately released. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
It's
we win that.
Well,
Yeah, exactly.
We win it.
It's
We win
too-
it.
It's too.
We win
But
it.
we don't just win it on how ridiculous it is. We win it on the fact that even if they do want to go down that line, who was the president that sent Ukraine? One president sent Ukraine blankets. Let's leave that there. Let's study what Reince just said.
Can we can go and cut it? Thanks, producer Al. Quickly, jump in here about
All right,
the
so-
but what about his argument?
I think it's a good argument. It's a good legal argument, but I think it goes a step beyond that. The president of the United States is the chief executive. He's the chief law enforcement officer. Under the Youngstown Steel case, in which there was a concurring opinion, not to get too deep here, by Justice Jackson. Jackson laid out 3 levels of presidential power.
Was Jackson the one that did the trials, the Nuremberg trials? Was that
Yes,
Jackson? Jackson was
exactly.
the chief. It was a
Correct.
very famous Supreme Court justice. In fact, a judgment in Nuremberg. I think Spencer Tracy is basically it's fiction, but taking on the Jackson role. He was the one that chaired the most intense of the Nuremberg trials.
Totally right.
So very prominent jurist.
Very prominent, established, great student of the Constitution. He laid out 3 levels of presidential power, where it's at its highest, it's in the middle, in the twilight, and the lowest. The highest is when the president acts in concurrence with the wishes of Congress. Well, guess what? Here, President Trump is acting to root out corruption which touches America. Congress has passed time and time again anti-corruption legislation. So there's absolutely no way to say that he, as the chief executive, could have been wrong here, even if you assume all the worst, which I do not. I think there was no quid pro quo. I agree with Reince that there was no intent. But even if you give them that, even all the worst assumptions, you still come back as the chief executive. He's fully in his power.
You ought to write that up like Andy did. You ought to write Youngstown up.
Okay.
We'll put if you put it on the. I think you put your stuff on Sinclair.
Yeah.
We'll definitely put it. We'll highlight it on our site. It's a new argument. Haven't heard it. And let people jump in and debate it. I think this is, we get many. Let's go back.
I'll do that better.
Can we go over that just once?
Sure.
I want that those top lines very clear. What was that you said?
Justice Jackson,
Yeah.
who was a very prominent, as Steve said, jurist, a great student of the Constitution,
Nuremberg trial.
Nuremberg trial prosecutor, laid out in the Youngstown Steel case, which is a 1952 case,
Yeah.
having to do with the Korean War and the fact that Truman wanted to nationalize the steel industry.
Yeah.
And there were strikes in Youngstown, Pennsylvania, and then there was a case about what is the president allowed to do in terms of national security, international relations. There are 3 levels of presidential power. It is the greatest when the president acts in concurrence with the wishes of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the middle, in the twilight, when the president acts and Congress hasn't expressed its perspective.
Yes.
It's the lowest when the president acts against Congress. In this case, here's what President Trump did. We've all seen the transcript. He's on the phone and he says, hey, you guys got to figure out what's going on there with that corruption. Ukraine has been receiving American funds for years. Congress has over and over passed legislation that's against corruption.
Yeah.
So which of the 3 levels does that fall into? The first. The president is acting in concurrence with the stated prospective wishes of Congress.
Big deal.
I like it, but I want that written up because we'll put it up there and let's have people debate.
I'll write
that.
it up.
We're going to
I'll
have
do
you
an
back.
iPad.
We'll have you
I
back
want-
on next couple of weeks. I like this.
I want to get to the link there. That I agree with that, but then how do you go from that to the very next sentence you said, where you said there's no quid pro quo? Do you mean no improper quid pro quo?
What I'm saying is there are 2 ways to argue this. Well, there are several ways.
He's arguing it wouldn't matter.
I'm arguing it wouldn't matter.
Wouldn't matter.
I'm
he's
arguing
saying, he's saying he's got plenipotentiary power. How
Right.
I'm not a
So-
lawyer. Don't try to be one.
it's several levels, right? So on the very merits.
I went to the business school, not the law school.
There you go. He's in the green. So on the very merits, you're going to argue there was no quid pro quo. The money was released. Then you're going to argue there was no intent. You can either win or lose on those arguments. You likely, Reince is right, you likely will win.
Yeah.
But even if you assume you're going to lose,
Attack the premise.
even if all of that you give the Dems,
Well, that's what I did.
It
the other
doesn't
night.
matter.
The premise is not a political thing. It's about corruption.
it doesn't matter because the president is in a position as the chief executive, as the chief law enforcement officer. We have great powers that are given to this president under the Constitution, under Article 2. And those powers in this exact situation are at their highest because he's acting within and in accordance to the stated position of Congress, which is corruption is bad.
Yeah.
Corruption's
Well,
bad.
you're watching out. You're a good steward in husbanding the resources of the American taxpayer.
Of course. It's an absolute no-brainer.
And just on that corruption piece, because we're going to go to break here in about a minute and a half, Raheem, I want to contextualize this for the audience because this is very important. The reason Nigel was here. Ernst & Young says it's in the top
Top corrupt countries in the world.
top couple, a handful of corrupt countries in the world, and think about that for a second. The Guardian, which is no Breitbart, no right wing paper, the Guardian in the UK says it's the single most corrupt nation in Europe.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And hundreds of millions, if not billions, going over to Ukraine from the West all the time. And guess what? Just before we go to break, the Wall Street Journal now reporting that the IMF
That's
bailout
right.
that was due to go to Ukraine stalled. Why? Corruption.
Corruption.
Boom.
Exactly.
Oh, baby.
Big.
It's Christine Lagarde. This is Christine Lagarde, who was a hammer, right, when it comes to the French finance minister, right, who's been was head of the IMF, and I think she's taking the ECB. Okay, this is War Room Impeachment. Stephen K. Bannon. We're going to jump, take a commercial break, pay some bills, be right back.
War Room Impeachment with Stephen K. Bannon, Jason Miller, and Raheem Kassam. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Impeachment, 2 November 2019, the year of our Lord 2019, episode 14. We're live at the Breitbart Embassy on Capitol Hill. We're honored to have one of the killers, Boris Epstein, from the campaign. He was head of surrogates, ran surrogates under Jason Miller. Jason Miller was my wingman. Raheem Kassam's my wingman. Jason's out on assignment today, coaching. Okay, he'll be in tomorrow. He'll be in the War Room tomorrow with Raheem. I'll be on assignment. I'm going to be on the Fox News show with Marie Bartoloma at 10 a.m. tomorrow in New York City, live. And I'll be on the show here 9, at least for a little while before I get into the green room and get focused. I want to thank our local producer Dan for not punching us out this time. Very different. We actually the live stream. We hit the right button, hit the ON, don't hit the OFF button. Look, we're making it up as we go along here. This is all baling wire. We got a lot to go through. A lot of wood to chop. What we're doing, the making them famous segment of the show, which every day we focus on another freshman Democratic congressman, one of those, 31 districts or 29, however the redistrictings work, that we got to flip in 18. We're giving every one of the Democratic congressmen a chance to come on the show. We've already done 2. We're going to do another one today, but we're going to hold and do that tomorrow when Jason Miller's here. Raheem and Jason will do that. I want to go back to messaging. I understand we're spending a lot of time on messaging. We got a lot of stuff to do. We want to go through Morrison's testimony. I want to talk about Sinclair and what the middle of the country feels. I want to talk about surrogates. But Raheem, let's go back to the messaging segment. How's this coming together now in kind of a unified? President Trump has been tweeting out unity and substance, unity and substance. And I continue to say granularity is your friend here. The more granular we get in this, people are going to find that this is a debate about policy, and I'm not a deep state guy. I think it's basically the bureaucracy, the apparatus has one idea of what they want to do in national security policy, particularly against Russia. And you're going to see this debate, and I think it's a healthy debate to have about America First national security policy. I don't think we've had that debate. President Trump's done such an amazing job in China. We changed the whole thing around to now confront China, and you see the benefits of that. You've seen how everybody, what they've said about his policy is wrong. All this fear-mongering about the tariffs. You see the blowout numbers on Friday, which were blowout numbers. And what people miss, said this yesterday in the show, It's the revisions in the previous months. Normally, under Obama and other people, you see revisions down, right? They're stacking the deck. Here you're seeing upper revisions. We got wages rising. Hispanic, African American, the unemployment there is just unbelievable.
The August numbers were revised up 51,000 jobs. That is about a 50% revision.
Right.
That is crazy. And then 44,000 in September. That is absolutely unbelievable. And don't forget the wage increases. We're now 3% wage increase year over year, which is very healthy.
Look, the wages are finally coming up, and particularly coming up as you go down the to the lower skilled workers. Wages are starting to rise. This is both what he ran on, the immigration policy to protect workers, right? It's not to hurt anybody, it's to protect workers, and the trade policy to bring manufacturing jobs back. You've seen the 1-2 punch of the Trump economic program. And what you're seeing with Elizabeth Warren and what you're seeing with Bernie Sanders out there in Iowa and others, it's a crazy, radical, socialistic idea. Trump is showing you with center-right or right-wing populism, nationalism, economic nationalism, deconstruct the administrative state, cut taxes to incentivize people, and put people to work.
It's capitalism at its truest, actually, right?
Yes.
Capitalism at its truest cares for the workers, it cares for manufacturing, it cares for industry, but it takes the government largely out of it.
Yes.
And that's what he's doing.
Well, we do. Being a populist, I do have problems with Wall Street, and I got problems with these big corporations not thinking that people are disposable, thinking that our workers are not. Remember, workers are at the center of the Trump program. This is a worker. It's turned into a worker-based party. President Trump is a populist, and I want to go. And so that's why I think, in a large extent, the Democrats have overplayed their hand. You know, Stephanie yesterday said that we all know, and we saw from the vote, he is going to get impeached on a date certain. I happen to think that date is around now December 21st. I think it's going to take him that long to do it because they've got the votes, and now they're all in, and they've left rationality.
I
right?
think they're going to go into next year, actually.
Well, I think the trial will go to next year. I'm saying not the acquittal. I'm saying just the House part. I think will take all the way up to Christmas, and they'll kick that into. If the House part goes beyond this year, they're going to have a problem with their own primaries because I think February 3rd, the Iowa caucus got to be a hard stop on any. If it bleeds into the primary process, I think the Democrats are going to have a bigger problem than they think.
But you know who's conducting it. And those people have never done anything on time. You think Adam Schiff has ever gotten anything done on time? So realistically, there's only, 20 days left, legislative days?
9 days.
Well, but
the legislative, yes.
Counting the days they'll stay,
yes,
because they're staying this week.
Yes.
That's not on recess.
No. Just the investigators.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the investigators definitely.
They'll have about 20.
They're
to
working
30
6 days a week.
Right.
Although this week, of the guys they have booked, and we'll talk about this tomorrow in tomorrow's show, I agree with Jason. I don't see a lot of people showing up. I think what they're going to do messaging-wise is say, hey, we gave the Republicans everything they wanted. We gave them this process. We gave them totally open. And look, Trump's obstructing justice. Nobody the first week's going to show up, right? Because I think these people are all going to be under executive privilege, and that's still to be argued.
You know, the issue for the Democrats is this, though. The American people, right now, USA Today Suffolk poll came out, 41-39, they would vote for Donald Trump over a generic Democrat. That's actually a huge number, huge win for the president, because generics usually win. Because you don't think of a specific person. You don't think of that person's negatives. You know, for Elizabeth Warren, it's her Medicare and all her ridiculous policies. For Joe Biden, is that he's, a little bit, DMW,
Right,
dead man
right,
walking, right?
right.
So when you don't...
Everybody said the intensity last night in Iowa was not there for Biden. He brought the fewest people. He gave a rote speech. It was just paint by numbers.
He's the fourth in Iowa now.
Yeah.
It's Warren, Sanders, Buttigieg, then Biden. He's dropping like a rock.
They don't believe though that Mayor Pete had his Obama moment. They were all trying to do. And Kamala Harris, they said on the big stage, is just not happening. I want to go back to messaging on this, Raheem. Let's go back to where do we stand with the messaging of all this? We know what the Democrats got a short elevator pitch: arms for dirt. Okay, you can get arms for dirt. That's what they're saying. What's the counter?
Look, we've been talking for the last week about what's landing and what's not. Let's be frank about this. The Democrats are going to impeach the president.
Overwhelmingly likely. Yes.
There is not a lot.
Oh no, in the House they're good.
Right.
Otherwise, they'd shatter, and it would be a fiasco. The opportunity cost that they're putting the nation through over the holiday, a constitutional crisis, and the opportunity cost. We're not doing USMCA.
No.
We're not focusing on Hong Kong.
Infrastructure.
We're not doing infrastructure. Prescription drugs, whether it's domestic policy or foreign policy. Now and inside the bubble, it's going to be a firestorm. That's all everybody's going to talk about. All the action side of the room. There's no real hearings going on. You're going to have a slowdown in everything.
Yeah. The Democrats will impeach the president in the House. So the question is, what does the Senate do? Does it have a quick show trial? Does it throw it out real quick, or does it have a proper thing? And what we're seeing from the Washington Post reporting last night is exactly what we've been talking about for the last week. I'm going to read the headline to you in a couple of lines. Growing number of GOP senators consider acknowledging Trump's quid pro quo on Ukraine. Okay, so what do they mean by that? A growing number of Senate Republicans are ready to acknowledge that the president used U.S. military aid as leverage to force Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden and his family, as the president repeatedly denies a quid pro quo. But it's interesting when you go through, it sounds originally, the Washington Post is making it sound like the Senate Republicans are willing to flip on Trump. Not so. Get into the arguments. Inside a lunch on Wednesday, Senator Ted Cruz said a quid pro quo is not illegal unless there is corrupt intent, and echoed Senator John Neely Kennedy's argument that such conditions are a tool of foreign policy. I'm going to quote Kennedy for you. To me, this entire issue is going to come down to, why did the president ask for an investigation? To me, it all turns on intent, motive. Did the president have a culpable state of mind? Based on the evidence that I see, that I've been allowed to see, the president does not have a culpable state of mind.
Counselor, people don't know that Boris is actually a tremendous lawyer.
Yeah, kind of think of me as more of a hammer than a smart guy, but it's okay. I'll take it. It's better be tough than smart.
I consider you a nail. I've always considered you more of a nail than a hammer, but that's
all right. I'll move on from that one. So here's my worry about that. When you start giving, when you start pulling back your lines and you're giving the opposition a lot, you have less to fight back with. So if we start saying, okay, you know what, you're right, there was quid pro quo, but it's okay. I don't like that.
Didn't they already do that? Didn't Mick Mulvaney go up there and already do that?
Well, what Mick did was...
Is there any way to pull that back?
Absolutely. You know why? Because the president said there was none. And the president is the one that...
And I agree. Listen, one of the things, and that's what I said on Cooper the other night, Anderson Cooper, is that it's in the substance. Let's just go. And it's not. I'm not even making the Youngstown case. I'm just making that you see it. He's very focused on corruption. And
correct.
He's got a duty and a responsibility to do this.
He's the
and Joe Biden. It's not about Anderson's premise, what I would not buy into. It's not about some political thing. When Secret Empires that kind of kicked this off, which was the Schweitzer book. After we did Clinton Cash, we did Secret Empires, but it was about everybody. Mitch McConnell gets lit up in this book. It was talking about, elected politicians. We never thought at the time. Peter Schweitzer never thought that Joe Biden would run for president again. This was
right. He said he wouldn't.
Yeah, this was a swan song. It was about Biden as vice president of the United States, what he did in the Ukraine with his son, but more importantly, what he did in China. China, that he's been compromised by the Chinese Communist Party.
Joe Biden was the face of the Obama administration on rooting out corruption. His kid is getting paid by a shady Ukrainian billionaire. You don't think Joe Biden should have at least recused himself? So on those merits, we win.
That's improper quid pro quo.
And we have it on tape.
Yeah.
We all see it at the fancy Council of Foreign Relations. Joe Biden's talking about $1 billion. He's talking about $1 billion that he was holding up. So the prosecutor who was investigating the company his kid was on the board of would be fired. But even beyond that, I do not want to see our senators giving up arguments, because once you start doing that, once you start saying, okay, we'll give you that, it's easier to keep pulling back. It's just like war. If your troops are falling back, that momentum is going backward. We want to be going forward and giving more arguments, because
we're always best on offense.
Correct.
We're always best on offense.
Here's the thing. I mean, based on where the Senate was 2 weeks ago, we're in the mumble tank.
Yeah. It's fine.
This is actually more aggressive for them.
No.
They're actually getting into it now and figuring out exactly what happened.
Flake and Sass told us 3 weeks ago at the lunch on an anonymous vote, there were 30 to 35 guilty.
I think that's true.
Yeah, 30 when they're anonymous. So Raheem's part. Okay, we're going to run out of time here. We got a bunch of stuff to do. I want to go to when we talk about, we have a war room. We're going to have surrogates. We have bookers and things like that. You ran surrogates for the Trump campaign. Talk about, and a lot of your work in the White House was thinking about how you get messaging out. We're trying to coach the audience up in a war room, like in the Trump campaign or here, where you're not actually having people vote for things. You're trying to educate people.
Right.
This is an education. We're not a pack. We don't go and say vote for this, vote for this. You're trying to educate people. When you what is a surrogates program? How does it work? And how do you train people?
So surrogates are those who are going out on air, on TV, on radio, on podcasts, et cetera, and delivering your messaging. Surrogates are usually not people who are employed by a campaign or a White House. They are those who are outside and are giving validation to your points. They're giving validity to what you're saying. So
former state AGs, former U.S. attorneys, former politicians, grassroots leaders, people like that, businessmen, economists.
Everybody, lawyers.
And you have verticals. If it's a legal thing, I got these guys. If it's economics, I got these guys. You got all these verticals.
It's vertical and horizontal. So you have verticals for exactly. So if it's a finance issue, you want somebody who was, part of the Fed. We had David Malpass, who's right now the president of the World Bank. He was one of the major economic surrogates on the campaign. We had Stephen Moore, an economist. Kudlow was
Anthony Scaramucci.
Oh, the Mooch. Yeah, the Mooch. Once he went through all the other campaigns, he came over to us. Oh yeah.
Whoa. Ba-boom.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm over here now. I'm gonna raise you guys some money. Yeah, Donald Trump's the best. Yeah, the Mooch.
Check out my restaurant.
You guys want
Anthony, I didn't approve that at all. That's the message not approved.
Yeah, listen, I know
you guys go way back. Okay.
We go back. I disagree with Anthony what he's doing, but I've known each other a long time.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. So it's not about Scaramucci. The point is this: the point is we have these surrogates. So you've got finance, you've got legal. In this case, it's a legal political issue. So what you want is top legal minds. So, for example, I think the Federalist Society should be out there more. Leonard Leo and folks like that who were huge for us in the Gorsuch and the Kavanaugh confirmations.
This is going to get like Kavanaugh. We need to stand up.
Right.
No offense. I don't mind have Boris give me his legal opinions and rights. They're both great lawyers, but I'd like to have some Federalist Society guys.
I agree with you.
Leonard Leo when we need him.
You know what I mean? I'm more of a street guy. You know what I mean? You want some guys who argue in front of the Supreme Court. They're wearing fancies. They're going to Brooks Brothers.
Yeah. Boris is the guy outside beating up guys in front of the Supreme Court.
I will say in defense of the Federalist Society and Leonard Leo, they are trying to get a
I know,
back.
But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a future episode.
We want those guys.
But in each vertical, you want best of class out there with us. Top economists for finance, the Federal Society for legal.
Correct.
Your grassroots, you want the top grassroots leaders.
And then that's who you want out there. But then you have to give them the tools. You have to give them the information. So you have to be constantly in touch. So in a presidential campaign, we used to put out talking points every morning that would go out at 6 a.m. on the top issues of the day. Right now, that's impeachment. So you send out talking points on impeachment, and then you have to have calls with the surrogates. And I would lead if whoever's running the surrogate operation leads the calls, but then you bring in others. You bring in your political director. You bring in your communications director.
That call was at 6 a.m. Remember, I joined that every now and again. Listen, because you ran the call,
right?
You ran the surrogates. You went to the thing. The article the other day about they're trying to get a modicum of the White House, and for the White House guys, I'm just teasing, but they said the Washington Post said it started at 10 a.m. in the Roosevelt room. I said, guys, that's lunch. I mean, you got to get in. It's early. It's a 6 a.m. call. You were firing guys up every day.
You've got to fire people up, and then if you've got your top line surrogates who are going on the big shows, the Good Morning Americas, the Today Show, even Morning Joe, because
you got to put them on Morning Joe.
I think you got to put them on everywhere.
We're gonna have guys on Morning Joe right now.
Even CNN, I used to go on that. Me and Chris Cuomo used to put the gloves on. I remember there was one time me and Cuomo put the gloves on. Paul Bigallo was like in the corner, just kind of, just a spectator beyond the ropes. And me and Cuomo were going at it when the president came out and said that he does believe Barack Obama was born in the U.S. Remember there was that event with one line in it? Well, me and Cuomo went at it.
Head right over the Trump Hotel.
Exactly. So you've got to put people on these shows.
Finest moments.
So if you do, no doubt, if you are having people on those high-level shows, you want to be calling them one-on-one.
Yes.
And talking through things and almost do a Q&A, a mock Q&A. And you want to fire them up.
It's tough because they're getting chop blocked. And look, this is what the media is supposed to do. We're not saying it's wrong. This is what the cauldron of democracy is about. Right. But when you go into those shows, it's a lion's den, right? You know that, hey, they're coming at you from the beginning, and you're taking people that don't do this professionally and trying to stand it up quickly.
The problem for us is that if it's, a Republican or specifically if it's a Trump representative and a Democrat and a moderator on most shows, you're 1 against 2.
Right.
So where the media goes over its skis is they're not moderating, they're attacking. They are editorializing, and that's a problem. But all you have to do is prepare. Whoever's going out, prepare for that. The advantage I think I had is I was myself doing the hits.
Right.
So not only was I firing people up, I appreciate it. Not only was I firing people up, I was also doing it myself.
Well,
so I knew what was useful.
And Jason, too, what we had was the ability with Sarah, you, Jason. We had senior people in the comms shop that were going into the toughest dens during there, right? You guys were going and getting mauled every day,
and you want that.
It allowed us to have other people going and do the I'm not saying the easier stuff, but the stuff where they had a chance to get the message out. You guys are just going in combat,
Totally.
It's just a blunt. It's a blunt the negative messaging that the negative narrative that they're trying to put on. So you have a defensive position, you got an offensive position.
And the most you can hope for is you go and I used to do, CNN, the Anderson Cooper and the hours before that, Jake Tapper. What you do is you go in and you know what your goal is. Your goal is to stand up for your messaging, to be tough, and for the people on the other side to hear, you know what, there's not only one perspective. There are two.
Okay, I want to go real quickly, and Raheem, I want to turn to really Sinclair about how this is playing outside the bubble. Raheem, every day we do a news roundup and a news thing about what's going on here, of how, because this is the political center, right, in New York, this kind of inextricably linked, but it's how Sinclair, the great power of Sinclair, that's got stations all over the country.
Sure, yes.
We had a lot of people on the Sinclair network going out and talking during the campaign. You're now the chief political commentator. When you're out and about, or you're hearing from your Philly groups or just from the local people, where do they stand right now? Are they just coming into this story? Do they know much about it? Have they already formed opinions?
It's hot. The story's hot. It's the hottest story out there in the country. It's that and the economy. But I will tell you this.
So you're saying people are already engaged. This thing that nobody pays attention, nobody cares, because we keep hearing that. Nobody cares
People
about this.
care.
Okay. That would be, so in other words, it'd be wrong that people don't care.
People are absolutely they care. They're fired up. They know what's going on. And I'm doing probably 1 or 2 impeachment segments a week. So I do a segment every single day that plays on every single local news station we have. We have 75 stations all across the country, from Washington State to Maine, all across the country.
And you cover like 3/4 of the nation, right?
It's a huge number.
Right.
My segment goes out to about 6 million people, is seen by about 3 or 4 million people. For reference,
Those are Fox numbers. I mean, those are Sean Hannity numbers.
Sean Hannity at the top numbers.
Yeah.
That's 3 times what Anderson Cooper. Now he has a show, but mine's a 90-second to 2-minute segment, but it's in the local news. So what I'm hearing back from folks is that they're engaged, and it's along the fault lines. The people who don't like the president, they don't like him on this. The people who are for the president, they support him through this. It's just like an election. This is going to be a base decision politically, but the safe numbers say this, right? That he gets impeached. If you have to sort of look ahead, he gets impeached. He goes to the Senate. He doesn't get removed. Politically, that's a huge win for Donald J. Trump.
What do you think about when people out there in the economy, as you go around in these stations, the robust nature of the advertising, something like that, what are people's sense of the economy? We have one view over here from Washington, D.C., another view from Wall Street. What is the sense out there as you do your work for Sinclair?
Robust. The economy is robust. People are feeling it. Businesses are having trouble finding people to hire. The feeling about the economy is overwhelmingly positive. And here's what happened.
Even for people that hate Trump.
You can't find a way around it. You've got a job. You're getting more money. The median income for somebody in the middle class is up $5,000. Those are huge numbers. That changes. If somebody's making 60, now they're making 65. That's almost a 10% increase in what they can do. That's something else they can get for their house, maybe even a vacation. That's a huge difference, and it's a huge win for the president. And no matter what you say, you can't take it away. Remember, the Democrats tried to push this recession crap, and it didn't happen. They said, the recession's coming. That was 4 months ago. You see the recession? I don't. S&P record.
We got a couple of minutes left. Do we have time for you to go through Morrison, anything to highlight Morrison?
We'll get on to Morrison tomorrow. There's a lot to cover on Morrison tomorrow. I wanted to bring it over to, and by the way, Boris, I hope you come back because I want to have that recession argument out with you. I fear what's coming next year. But
fine. I want to do that.
I'm more positive. I'm positive.
Yeah. By the way, one of the reasons that President Trump's all over the Fed is his success. That's the reason the dollar is so strong, is that everybody wants a piece of the American economy. It's one of the reasons the stock market's up. It's one of the reasons that you can sell bonds here for very low yield. Everybody wants a piece of America, right? Maybe right now some of the high-end properties in New York and other things, the elite properties are down, some of the property market, and that's because we've stopped Russian and Chinese money coming in here. There's much tighter restrictions under the Trump administration. But everything else, any other capital market you can get in, it's on fire. And that's one of the reasons people vote on Donald Trump's economy every day in the global currency market. And that's why the dollar is always so strong. Now, the guys in the White House argue it's overvalued. That's an argument for economists to make, and I know President Trump that feels it's very overvalued. But one of the reasons it is that this economy is hot, and people want in on it.
There's no doubt it's hot, but is it too hot too quick? Is the big question?
No, because it's been warming up, right? It's been warming for 3 years. If he gets the Chinese to commit and actually to not manipulate their currency, which is one thing's to commit, one thing's to not do it. If that happens, that'll be huge. Second thing, real quick. All right, off to Steve.
We're going to get
more about the economy.
War Room impeachment 2 November. Year of our Lord 2019, episode 14 tomorrow. Raheem Kassam, Jason Miller in the War Room. I'll be at Maria Bartiromo's show on Fox at 10 a.m.